come in. But I had one more thing I wanted to ask you about before we continue.
Yeah.
Um, this is because I have you on. Of course, we have to talk about our favorite subject, which is Israel and the Palestinians, of course. So, and I'm going to give you a chance to give your thought. My thoughts on this are they're really like when I look at the whole issue there, I don't really see any good actors, right? So Israel was founded by communists, and now they use pretty draconian measures to, protect their socialist state.
Was
And
it really started by commies?
yeah, it was founded by Marxists. Um,
I didn't, wow.
yeah. So when people are like, "Oh, it's a Jewish state," I'm like, there really isn't anything about Judaism in the founding documents. There's the Jewish ethnicity and the concept of the Zionist right to return and all of that, but it's not actually like it's not a religiously Jewish state and never has been. It's a secular state, and it was
Yeah.
founded by Marxists. And now they're protecting their socialist protectorate state that they have, and then on the other side you have Fatah and Hamas, who they were founded not only to end the Israeli state, but to drive out all Jews from, they say from the, what is it, from the river to the sea, to drive out
Yeah.
all Jews from the Holy Land. They're absolutely brutal. You could argue that they're even more brutal to their own people than even to the Israelis. Um,
Yes.
I found that if I ever criticize one, I'm accused of supporting the other.
Mm-hmm.
And if I criticize both, it takes too many words and I lose my colorful background on my Facebook posts. So I'm
Yeah.
not going to do that. But I notice you don't talk a lot about the Middle East peace process or the Middle East conflict or whatever. Is it for similar reasons as me or completely different, altogether?
Yeah, for probably very similar reasons as you.
Yeah.
And that is something I've actually changed my mind on. Uh, when I was younger, I used to really hate Israel. Not Jewish people, not at all. But I used to really hate Israel.
The Israeli state, right?
Yeah, and Israel as a state. And I thought everybody is horrible over there. And then I grew up, basically. Um, that's all it is. Life's all about growing up.
Yes. Yes.
And then I started realizing that I'm doing to Israelis what rednecks that are bad, because I love rednecks, um,
The bad red, specifically the bad rednecks, right?
do to Muslims and Arabs. Like they're
Right.
just taking a small slice of the bad ones and applying it to everybody else. So obviously, not all Israelis are like that.
Right.
And I met a lot of Israelis here in the United States, like
Yeah.
Israeli people, and they're cool as heck. We even had Israeli neighbors, and we were really good neighbors. And I just never understood my parents that they were really good friends with these people, and they still hated, Israel and everything about it, and they didn't
Right.
trust Israelis. And I'm like, this is really confusing and weird. And it's like they don't even notice, like, um, the Arabs basically deported. I don't know what the number is. Maybe a million Jews from all over the Middle East to Israel.
Right to Israel, right? Hundreds. I don't know if it's a million, but I know it's in the hundreds
It
of thousands.
it is
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Jewish population is small, but it was big in all over the Middle East.
Right.
And so, like, they deported them, and like, that's not cool. That's basic. They did what the Israelis did to the Palestinians. So, how do you even have a leg to stand on?
Right. Yeah.
Like, if the Arabs hadn't done that, I can see, even the Arab Jews having not taken sides with the state of Israel
Right.
because they didn't move there when if they hadn't moved there by then, they weren't planning on to until they got deported.
Right. Yeah. I mean, most Jews were fine with where they were until, I mean, maybe they weren't treated quite as well as they'd like, but they weren't going to necessarily move to a new state.
Yeah.
They were kicked out, and so
Yeah.
and a lot of the Palestinians were kicked out of their countries too. I know in Jordan, at least, in the what is it, Black Sunday or Black Saturday, Black something, where
Yeah.
the Jordanians, the Arabs that were trying to return after the, I think, 1948 war, or the Yom Kippur War, one of them, 1967 war, 6 Day War, one of the wars, and they tried returning and went into refugee camps, and then and they were Jordanian citizens, and the Jordanians pushed them back
Yeah.
into, killed a lot of them and pushed them back in. So I mean, the there's a lot of people to pity on both sides of that, and to empathize with, where they are
Yeah.
in their
Yeah.
situation, which is why I find myself, you know, when people say, "Do you support the Jewish state?" I say, I don't support any state. Like, I don't support the American state. I don't support the state of South Carolina. Like, I don't support the concept of statism. If you're
Yes.
asking me, do I think Jews should be allowed to live in the Levant or the Holy Land? Yeah.
Duh.
Do I think Muslims and Christians and whomever else should be able to live there as well? Yes. Do I think that people should be trying to push people out of areas because of something like their ethnicity? No, because this isn't a private covenant community. It's essentially a patch of desert next to the Mediterranean Sea, and
Yeah.
you should let people that are self determined to do that. So but yeah, so I find when people, especially Jews and Muslims, that don't talk about it, it tends to be for similar reasons as you and me, that you can't really get into it without people going, like, if you were to say something critical of Netanyahu, something that I'd even agree with, a lot of people are going to be like, well, yeah, you're an Arab Muslim, of course you don't like him.
Yeah. Right.
And if you say something critical of, let's say, Hamas or Fatah or the PLO or whomever, you're going to get people going, you're a sellout to your race. And of course, you get the benefit of people accusing you of taqiyya, to endear yourselves further with the rest of the population so you can behead us in our sleep,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is always fun.
Yeah. It's so sad, man. Like the whole Israel thing is before that, like Muslims and Jews got along forever very well.
Yeah.
Like
Muslims and Jews fought
Jews,
against Christians during the Crusades, like,
yeah, yeah,
or
no,
most
yeah.
of the
Jews
Crusades. Yeah.
escaped from Christian nations for centuries.
I know.
Like this is a very new thing that Muslims and Jews don't get along anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
No,
not all Muslims and all Jews, obviously.
right.
Really have to like explain that away, but somebody might be thinking that.
Well, and a Jew and a Muslim talking about it. Yeah, no, so I was very, and I was just talking with Kareem El Sayed about this.
Yeah,
I was very anti-Islam.
yeah,
And growing up, I wasn't ever raised to be anti-Islam. I was just always told the Arabs want to kill you,
yeah,
but not necessarily like all Arabs are bad, but like the Arabs are raised to hate you and want to kill you. Which to some extent, a lot of that is true with a lot of Arabs. Not obviously not all, but and not necessarily hate me, but the idea of Israel or whatever. But I wasn't, as a kid, you're not given that much nuance. You're told the Arabs, be careful of Arabs because they want to kill you. And there weren't a lot of Arabs here to begin with in South Carolina, so I'm like, okay, well then I'll just steer clear of Arabs. And then later on, what's that?
no, I was laughing.
Yeah, so later on, growing up and being kind of a neocon slash conservative, I was just by default I was anti-Islam, and what I knew about Islam came from right-wing sources, and I was told about taqiyya, and I was told about Sharia law, and I was told about all these different aspects of laws that I think a lot of us are uncomfortable admitting are very similar to Mosaic law, but that's another subject. But I was told about all these things, and when people started challenging me to do some research about it, and I did, and I'm like, man, this is way more nuanced than this whole black and white Islam versus the civilized world narrative that I've been told my whole life. And it's only recently, like you said, that there's been this sort of, thanks to Wahhabists and the foreign governments that have helped to foster them, that they've really changed what Islamic society was like. You can't say that, for example, Muhammad wasn't brutal in how he did his conquest, but that's true of the Jews in the Bible too. Like, I mean, that was that time, and the Christians were every bit as brutal. Like, that's how people fought back then.
Yeah, exactly. It's I'm just like, yeah, okay, so what about today? And
Exactly.
there's a video or two. I've seen two videos so far. Funny enough, on Memory, Memory TV.
I love memory. I just like memory memes.
Yeah, memory memes are
Like my
awesome.
profile picture. Yeah.
And there was this Islamic imam, and I don't know if he's still alive or not. I think he was Saudi, but he was talking about the problems with the Middle East, and it's something that I absolutely agree with. And my parents, when I showed my dad that video, he hated it, and like most Arabs would hate it unless they're from here.
Which video is that? Oh, the one you were
It,
just talking about?
yeah, the guy. So the imam is talking about the problems with Muslims, especially like Arabs.
Okay.
How Arabs entered on the stage of history as conquerors and teachers. And you had like the Baghdad House of Wisdom, the Islamic Golden Age of Knowledge,
Right.
so on, and all of our philosophers, doctors, all of that stuff.
Right. Right. Right.
And they still act like they are that they have nothing to learn from the West.
Right.
But there's a lot they can learn from the West. And if they don't, because Arabs are very proud people, so you can't you well you can, but you can't really tell an Arabic person they're wrong. You're literally attacking them.
Right. And that, I
It's
mean, that's true of people in general, though. I mean, they
oh
may
yeah,
be
but
more
it's
pride
like
driven, but yeah.
it's worse with Arabs though. You
Okay.
can never tell them they're wrong. Me showing the video to my dad. Any Arabic person looking at that, they would hate it. Because it because he's talking about how wrong Muslims and especially Arabs are,
Right.
and they don't want to hear it. They still think that what they did 1,000 years ago by introducing algebra is matters now. It really doesn't.
That's what you should lean on today. Is
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
and you see
yeah.
that with everyone. Like, I mean, you'll see Christians that'll start talking about, or you'll see the a lot of people in the alt right, and they'll talk about ancient Rome, and I'm like, that was 2,000 years. Like, what? This is what we're going. We should be like the ancient Romans. And I'm like, you mean like the gay wrestling events they used to have in public with the kids? Like, I mean, this is what we're going, like, since we're against degeneracy now, this is what we're that's a whole other subject. But
Well, I do think we should have legions going around building roads. That was awesome.
yes. Yes, we should definitely have the army making the roads.
I Well, so that's what I thought of when I saw that Trump said if Congress doesn't finish the wall, the military will.
Yes,
I was like, okay, yeah, that's what Rome did.
the legions are going to be out there. That's
Yeah,
funny. I didn't make that connection, but yeah, it would be. But yeah, so uh, and a lot of, I mean, you said that the Arab world or the Islamic world can, which are two, in many ways, two different.
yeah,
They're not mutually exclusive, but they're
yeah.
two overlapping things.
Malaysians, Egyptians, Bosnians, these are all very different types of Muslims.
Yeah, they're all the Muslim world,
Yeah,
but there's a lot of disparity in what they're going through.
yeah,
But the Islamic world, or and I guess more specifically the Arabic world, can learn a lot from the West, but they can also learn a lot from the Arabic world in the past and what they did to
yeah,
modernize, as opposed to this, Wahhabist push to, you look at, someone showed me videos of what Kabul used to be like, and
yeah,
what Tehran used to be like, and what I don't think it was in Saudi Arabia. I think it was Egypt. It was like another major. Beirut in Lebanon. What they used to
yeah.
be like. It was indistinguishable from any European country at the time.
Yes.
Very modern. Very. I mean, if you look at old pictures of Bin Laden, he's like hanging out in a '57 Chevy, and like he looks like like any American kid would, except he was brown.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and they would go, "This was before Islam," and I'm like,
No.
I don't think that's true. I think Islam is from the 8th century, 6th century or something like that. I think Islam was pretty well existent at that time.
Yeah.
And what it was this was before Wahhab, and I know Wahhabism isn't the only extremist sect, but it was before this extremism took hold, and it was in not necessarily our lifetimes, but in the last couple generations, that it was completely different than it is now. So to try to say, oh, this is what Islam has always been like, is just as myopic and absurd as an Arab saying, well, we created algebra, so don't talk to
Yeah.
me about our problems.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, so I'm gonna say it right here on the on this episode because this is a little, people might turn off now, but so I recently joined the Proud Boys, right?
Okay.
And one of their things is like they're Western
The
chauvinists,
West
right?
is best. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get the concept. I can agree to the idea that the Western philosophy brought the modern world to us so far. Um, but a lot of these kids, the alt right, for example, especially the alt right. So
Right.
There are alt-right members probably in the Proud Boys, but the Proud Boys are not an alt-right organization. Because
Right.
there's a lot of misinformation out there about them. Like there are a lot of brown people in the Proud Boys.
The first
Um,
Proud Boys I ever saw was like a Cuban guy and a black guy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
So there's a lot of misinformation about them.
right.
But specifically though, like the idea, I get it, but the alt-right, especially though, like do you not realize that socialism came from the West, you know,
That's what I
and
tell. Like
communism,
Marx
and
is the West.
yeah, and fourth wave feminism, you know, like feminazism.
Yep.
Um, for my female viewers, feminism is fine. I'm talking about like the feminazis.
Yeah. Red radical feminism. Right.
Yeah, like all that stuff came from the West, not anybody else. That was introduced to the world by the West. So there are some good things that different regions in the world did, and some didn't. You know, Japan like is where it's at, and South Korea because of how much they opened up to Western ideas and not their Eastern ones nonstop. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And the thing. So I get the idea of saying Western civilization, Eastern civilization as sort of baselines for what we're talking about. But the reality is, none of these civilizations existed in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
Like Western civilization, this isn't
China
Wakanda.
did.
Like there
Well,
was,
China and Japan on their own did,
to
but you're
some
talking
extent,
about yeah.
to
I
some
want
extent, well, in the last couple hundred years, not so much though.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, you're right. There was a period of isolation, but for at least the last what 400 years, 300 years, something like that,
Yeah.
they've been fairly well open to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
The Middle East has always been. I mean, the Middle East has been the crossroads of the entire world.
Yeah.
So it's never been in a vacuum, and the West has definitely not been in a vacuum. I
Yeah.
mean, so
You know,
much
'cause
of.
Egypt.
Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say that the Mediterranean was Rome.
Right.
You know, a lot of these ideas did stick in the Mediterranean,
Exactly. And before
and
that, it was Greece. Yeah.
yeah, the Greeks. Well, even then the Greeks and the Egyptians, like the Greeks didn't conquer Egypt. They like basically intermarried
Right.
culturally.
Right.
Well, hold on. I mean, I'm talking before Alexander.
Right.
Alexander did conquer it, but
Right. Right.
regardless, yeah, you're right. It wasn't in a vacuum.
Yeah. So that's I get the desire to say no everything because the prevailing I guess popular culture thing right now is whiteness is bad and the Western civilization is bad and we have a thing or two we can learn from usually a group that we may or may not have a thing or two to learn from. And so there's this sort of idea of like, well, no, the West is good and it brought this and it brought that. So I get that, but I think a lot of nuance is lost in saying something like, for example, the West is best, or like you said, for the people saying, the Arab world brought you algebra, bunch of uncultured swine. So so now we're gonna get into the question phase of this show. We got a couple good questions. We got some questions that not gonna repeat, but but so here's the first one from and let me tag Erica in this in the comments. I just want her to see this. That's not gonna work. Erica,
I'm afraid.
you don't have to be
Oh,
afraid.
Erica with a K.
Yeah, and I can't. If you can tag her, then I can't. It won't let me tag her.
Okay.
So if you want to tag her, that's fine. So Erica Rodriguez asks, "Are we allowed to say coño?" And this goes to I guess there was a little brouhaha in your comments one time where she said coño, which she was expressing exasperation, and one
Yeah.
of your friends accused her of calling
My
her names.
my internet socialist girlfriend.
Your internet socialist girlfriend. So now you're on the record, Mohammed M Shaker. Is it or is it not okay to say coño on your timeline?
It is.
Okay.
Well, because but, because so I explained. She was like, "Hey," she messaged me saying, "Hey, she called me this word," and I was like, "I don't know what that word means." Um, So I was
Oh,
like,
the girl that Erica was talking with.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
I said, hey, Erica, just try not to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
Erica explained that, and I mean, she is right about this in different dialects. Konya means, oh, she thought it meant, so to her, Konyo means the C word,
Right.
but not to Erica. And I can understand that there are, different uh, language things about it, but I'd rather people honestly just not say stuff like that because you're gonna lose the person you're talking to.
Right. So, I mean,
Because
I'm
that girl, her name's Megan. She's cool, like she her and I got into it because she found a meme of mine, right? So she's from
Oh, okay.
California. She's from California,
Okay.
obviously. And she said, "Well, not like I posted an NPC meme," and she was like, "Well, not like you don't didn't call us liptards and snowflakes." And I was like, "No, Becky, I didn't." And then we went back and forth, and then we became friends surprisingly somehow, and now we're dating each other online.
Nice.
Yeah, very, very, very platonic and long distance. But
Dating
yeah,
is dating.
dating is dating. We're dating over politics. Not really. I'm still single.
That's
But
cool. It's a segue into dating.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But we've had conversations. She can listen,
Right.
and she's not completely deranged. She's not one of those ones.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
She was decently debating her talking points. They weren't going very far because she was debating talking points you would use with conservatives against libertarians. So
Yes. Yeah.
it wasn't sticking that well. But if we
Yeah.
had been conservatives, we would have had very little to say. But like for example, when she told me I wasn't being very patriotic, and I'm
Yeah.
like, that's correct. I'm not
I
in
saw
any
that.
way
Yeah.
patriotic. So yeah. Okay. So good. So we've covered that. So
Yeah.
yes, we can
But yeah,
definitely we can
like, just to expand on that real quick,
sure.
I actually prefer that people not call others names because one, people are watching, and
Right.
two, you're gonna lose who you're talking to, and you're just never gonna change any mind by that, or have a conversation if that's all it's gonna be.
Right.
I try to never do that unless it's like a complete asshole.
Right.
Then yeah, I will say words to them. But if we're just having a discussion, I'm not gonna say anything because if I'm right, I don't want them to already turn off and focus on the bad word I said.
Right. Now, I will say in Erica's defense with Konyo,
No,
um,
you're good.
it may be,
I'm not mad at Erica.
yeah, no, I know you're not. So it may be possible that some people use it that way, but I've always, like, from my relatively broad experience dealing with Latinos of Puerto Rican, Colombian, what else? Cuban descent. When they say coño, it's like how we'd say like shit, like like how we'd
Yeah.
say just we're exasperated by the thing. So I know so I do know that. So okay, great. So here's a question that's an actual that's a I guess a political-ish question. Do you regard this was from Paul Gordon, who asks
Oh, hi, Paul.
Paul Gordon, everybody. Do you regard the perhaps self-implosive nature of the God King model as the real underlying cause of the death of civilization in 1177 BC? Or do you ascribe the changes in climate and a series of catastrophic events like the Thera earthquake to that precipitous decline in civilization and the sudden vaporization of multiple empires?
Can I get that in a text somewhere?
Yeah, that's so I googled this just so that
I,
I could say anything about it because I had
I,
no idea what he was talking about.
yeah, but God King, is he talking about the Aztecs?
No, so this was 1177 BC, and I know this because I googled it before the show. That was when the Sea people attacked the Egyptian Empire.
Oh, they
They
attacked everybody.
they
That was the Bronze Age collapse.
Yes, the collapse of the Bronze Age, and so even though they were able to push back the Sea People, they never fully recovered, and they sort of declined from there, and then that
Yeah.
led way to the beginning of sort of a dark period that then led to the I guess Iron Age.
Yeah. So what's the question?
So do you think that it was the God King model I guess
Uh-huh.
like the monarchy that the
Yes.
king was God, that
Or
was the real cause of the death of civilization, or do you think it was like the earthquakes and climate change and all the other catastrophic events?
earthquakes.
So
Because
you're
that
are you
like
are you
the
good with bringing back the God King?
yeah, we should. As long as it's a Roman god king.
Because the West is best.
I love Rome. I don't know. But yeah, man, I think I mean, I'm making an
This,
educated guess here. It has to be earthquakes and climate change because like the Indus River Valley civilization was nowhere near being attacked by the sea people and
right.
they completely disappeared. So that's the only thing that you can apply to all of them.
Right, and there was a major change in temperatures, and then a bunch of, as a result, disasters that happened that destabilized what were relatively, and that was a time of, really, that was like the first time of global trade or something close to it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
we think, Paul. We like the God King model over here.
Yeah, God King.
We God King all the way. We just want each individual to be the God King.
Yes, of their own
Roman
property.
Empire in their house.
Yes.
So okay, this question from Kareem El Sayed. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Is Mohammed M Shaker single? Lovey emoticon, heart emoticon, emoji, tongue emoji, squirt 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 emoji.
It's still funny envisioning that.
It never stops being funny.
Yeah, yeah. I am single and ready to mingle.
Ready to mingle, everyone.
Yeah, I need a power. I need a powerful libertarian wifey before
And
I
camp
fall in love with
waifu.
another lefty because I keep doing that for some reason.
And cap waifu
Yeah,
is what you need. Don't
I'm
like I
telling you.
said, like I tell
It,
people, I married a Canadian liberal, so I'm not one to talk.
well, I don't have any issues with. I've always, for some, like literally, I've always dated lefty girls. I don't know why that is because I'm a masochist and so are they.
Like to expose yourself to pain for no
Yeah,
reason, unnecessary pain. I guess I'm in the same boat as you because I married
yeah,
one that's like to the left in Canada. Like she
yeah,
doesn't like American politics because like no one here is anywhere near what she would be okay with on the left.
yeah.
So I'm like, okay, then I'm fine with you not voting here. Good with
Yeah.
that. That's our
We don't
side.
have,
That
we're not gonna deport her.
we're definitely not going to deport her. We're definitely not going to deport her. So okay, here's another question. This is a good one. This is from. Oh man, I didn't write down who this was from. Hold on one second, I can tell you. Not that it necessarily. Jack Blakely. Jack Blakely, our good friend Jack, asks, "Do you believe China is practicing debt trap diplomacy to further their One Belt, One Road initiative, specifically in developing nations, or is China's growing foreign infrastructure investment simply to prepare for and facilitate an increase in trade?"
I would honestly say it's the second one. I think they're just trying to increase trade. That's all.
That's, I
I
mean,
don't think there's anything colonial about them.
no, I mean, all major states are using trade to some extent to grow their
Yeah,
influence in that region,
and
of course.
China growing its influence on a global level is a very new thing.
Yeah.
Forever, like they built a freaking wall around their country, and they've always been very by themselves and didn't really interact much with anybody aside from, until they got the Silk Road built. Well, it's not a real road, but you get the concept.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well,
But
and
yeah,
their exposure to outside countries, outside civilizations, was people trying to conquer them and destroy them. So, I mean, that's
yeah,
sort of understandable.
yeah.
They had
Uh,
sort of a North Sentinel East approach to diplomacy.
hmm I
So
think they're just trying to expand their trade, man. I
yeah,
think China's gonna become capitalist soon, like even more capitalist.
they're working their way. So I mean, at this point, to call, because someone was like, "Well, how can you say communism's bad when China is the fastest growing economy?" And I said,
They're
"Well,
not
first,
really
they're
so
not
they're not as
communist.
socialist as they used to be. Like
They-
their central planning is so I talked to a guy. I talked to a guy in an Uber ride about this, surprisingly, how he was writing a book about how when China started deregulating and opening up the markets is when they started increasing in prosperity.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. Like you open the markets and you open trade and you have more prosperity. The less of a choke you put on people's human action, with government, the less you do of that, the more it helps things. Chinese communism was the great leap forward, where as many as 80 million Chinese people die. That's communism. What they're
Yeah.
doing now is more of a centrally planned mixed economy. It's certainly centrally planned. It is built on debt. Their economy is incredibly precipitous, but people aren't starving to death like they were.
Yes.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's still better than that. There was a meme I saw that said, real communism has never been achieved. Real capitalism has never been achieved. The difference is that almost communism results in people dying, and almost capitalism results in people being fed. So,
Yeah.
even though neither one has come to its true, full, final form or whatever, one results in people, getting worse off, and one results in people getting better off than they were. And China's now in that better off phase. And the other thing that's interesting that's happening is there's a underground of, and this might be true with Muslims as well, but there's a massive growing of Christian converts there, and they keep it under because it's not illegal to be Christian, but it's illegal to worship in a lot of ways, and it's illegal to share it and things like that. You know, is there a possibility China becomes the Christian capitalist empire that the alt right is dreaming of?
Well, there are more Muslims, I think, in China than Christians, right?
That's the problem. It's
There's a
hard to
whole
track,
there's a
right?
whole
Like
region
you don't
of
really
Muslims.
know.
Yeah, and I think they actually they do some really bad things to the Muslims over
They
there.
do
It's kind of
terrible things. Yeah.
it's pretty horrible. And I've seen people, I've seen alt-right morons like cheer it on. I'm like, you're cheering on a communist
and
nation.
they and that's the part that's still communist, is this like enforced
Yes,
atheism.
yes. Yeah.
And I'm like, they do that to Christians too. Like,
Yes.
you're getting happy that people of faith are being destroyed for their faith, or
Yeah.
being victimized because of their faith, and being forced to eat pork and all this stuff. And it's like, but they do that to Christians too. They do that to anyone. It's not
Yeah.
because they're Muslim. It's because they believe something other than the supreme state.
Yeah.
So,
And that's why communists are the hate religion because
oh, it's in the way of the state. Yeah.
because you tell yourself that God is going to make it better. Whether God is real or not, God doesn't have to be real, but if God's going to make it better, you're not going to become a revolutionary. There's no reason to.
If you have a
Or
faith in
the
something,
afterlife, you
right.
get yeah.
If you have a faith in something bigger, and if you believe that your life is inherently valuable because your creator made you, fear, in the Bible, it says something about, and this is, see, and I don't, so the, what the Jews call Tanakh, and what the Christians call the Old Testament, is
Mhm.
that, I know that so this is what I get confused about. In the Quran, is the part that talks about, like, quote unquote Old Testament stuff, was that rewritten in the Quran, or is it like how ours is, where it's pretty much the exact same text?
Well, no, it's not the exact same text, but
Okay.
there's a lot of this. I mean, I think all the stories are pretty much the same, probably except for the whole Ishmael thing.
The Israel and, yeah, the Ishmael and
Isaac.
yeah, Isaac.
Yeah.
But okay, so it's not, so like in both Tanakh, and which is the Jewish Bible,
Yeah.
and
We
and
have
in
the
the
same
Old
stories
Testament.
and the same prophets. Yeah.
Right, but they're not verbatim. So like the Christian Bible, or the Christian Old Testament and Tanakh are pretty much verbatim. So
Yeah.
but in Tanakh and in Old Testament, it talks about being that, and I'm sure something similar in Quran, that we were made, we were fearfully made individually by God. If you
Yeah.
don't believe that, and if you don't believe there's anything inherently, or if you do believe that, and you believe there's something inherently special about your individual life, then why the hell would you sign up for a collective that turns you into a cog in a machine?
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
Yeah. And that's that's why they're atheists. And I don't think I've ever met a Christian communist. Honestly.
I recently have,
How
and yeah,
really?
just recently. And so it appears that this is so what they lean on is a handful of parts of the New Testament that talk about charity
Yeah, which
with
is
zero context whatsoever. And it's like, okay, but that's talking about choosing to help people.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
not,
yeah.
you
Jesus
know,
didn't say for you to grab a sword and tax people.
right. It doesn't say that. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't say you have to take everything from everyone and collectivize it and distribute it out, the way that, Marx wanted to. Um, and what I always go to them with is so in New Testament there's a story about, it's called the parable of the rich man, or story of the rich man, or whatever.
Uh,
A very rich man comes up to Jesus, and I'm going to destroy this story because I don't remember it specifically, but basically says, "How can I be closer to you?" And Jesus says, "Have you done this?" And he says, "Yes, I've done this." And he says, "Well, have you done this?" And he says, "Yes, you've done this." And he goes through a few things, and then he says, "Okay, sell or give away everything you own. Um, Come with me, and join me as I go and spread the gospel."
yeah,
And it says that he walked away sad, that the rich man walked away sad, presumably because he wanted his stuff more than he wanted to go and
yeah.
join.
So he didn't join them.
He didn't join him, and Jesus didn't make him. He respected his private property and said, "Okay, he's chosen not to join me. I'm going to go do my thing." That alone refutes capitalism, or communism. So anyway, I could go into that all day long. But yes, I have recently learned of Christian communists, and it's very, very easy to debunk what they have to say because it's nonsense.
Yes,
Um,
it's the same thing with the Muslim commies that I've been seeing because there's nothing at all in the Quran that comes close to being a collective, except for the idea of the ummah, the Muslim community. But
but that's true,
that's
and I mean every religion has the, in Christianity it's the church,
the church, yes,
right? Yeah,
that
so it's the same thing, right? Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing. The prophet, he married a rich woman that was a trader, and he respected her property. He didn't take it. He worked for her, and working hard is so. There's this hadith, right, where the prophet was entering the mosques to pray, and he sees people, and then he leaves, comes back, and he starts noticing this one individual that's always there praying to God,
Okay.
and so he asked, "Hey, who is this guy?" And they said, "Oh, it's blah blah blah, son of blah blah blah." There, and he was like, "How's he able to be in the mosque and praying all the time like this?" And they said, "Well, his brother takes care of him. His brother works and does this, and he takes care of him." And he said that Allah, God, will build a house for his brother and not for that guy because he's working.
Oh.
Yeah. So the guy praying nonstop, that doesn't mean anything to God. You have to actually work and do something.
Right, because there's the five pillars, right? So there's charity. If there's an
Yeah, yeah,
order,
yeah.
I'm not going to do it in the order. Charity, tithing, or that is tithing.
Yeah.
Charity, prayer,
Fact.
fasting, the Hajj, and then a
Yeah.
fifth one that I'm not remembering.
Me too.
That makes me feel better.
It's been a while.
But you can't. But the point is, you can't just pray. Like, okay,
Yeah,
great, you're praying,
yeah,
but that's not it.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's
yeah,
and that's the same. Yeah, it's the same thing. So it's you definitely, communism itself is built around, like, atheism is one of the tenets of communism, is that religion is the opiate of the masses, and that it's a oppressive tool used by the owner, the landlord class, or the owner, the oppressive class against the oppressed class, and that you have to shed it, and the bourgeoisie have to shed it as well in order to be able to achieve, to unshackle themselves and achieve the communist, collective utopia. So
yeah,
how is that Christian or Muslim? Like,
yeah.
it isn't. So
Don't know.
yeah. So I'll have to get a Christian communist on, and then you can call him. We'll beat him up.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so okay, well, that was all my questions. Before, and thank you again. I've been wanting so long to get you on. Thank you so much for coming on. You
Oh,
were
this was
definitely Yeah, we're definitely going to have you back on. Before I let you go, any final thoughts that you want to share? Any upcoming stuff you want to plug? Anything that you have to say? The floor is yours.
Keep watching the Muddied Waters of Freedom. Hopefully, I'll start coming back on the show again.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on more.
Yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed it because I had a lot of fun.
That was I'm always happy when you're on. So yes, check us out. Check out all Muddied Waters stuff. Mohammed will be on more and more on that. And yeah, check out Muddied Waters. Mohammed Waters. Check out the Mohammed Waters. Bathe yourself in the Mohammed Waters. So Mohammed, thank you again so much, my friend, for coming on. Stick around with me. I'm going to talk with you during the outro. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on My Fellow Americans. Thank you for rejoining us when the live feed went down and they came back on. Yeah, thank you for that, because you're the real ones who came back. So thank you for coming on. Join us tomorrow, where I am told that Chris Reynolds, attorney at law, will be the guest. Will be the guest for Matt Wright on his show, The Writer's Block, tomorrow. I don't know the time. It'll be in the evening. And then join us again on Tuesday for the Muddied Waters of Freedom, where we'll be talking about all the fun stuff that happened over the last week. And then join me next week, right here on the internet, on Wednesday at probably, let's say 7:30, I don't know, sometime in the evening, where I will be interviewing Shelby Steele, who is a free speech attorney in D.C. We're going to be talking about free speechy stuff. So that's going to be fun.
Lawyers.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. So, guys, thank you so much for joining again. We will see you tomorrow at the Writer's Block, and then again next week, and all the things I just said. So thank you again for joining, and God bless you.
They say about an eye for an eye in a time when the blind lead the blind. Who am I to deny when cry when a loved one dies? I recognize that body outside, bullet holes in a body that was alive. Now confined to a chalk outline. Find out how, but you never know why. It ain't even make it to the news at 9. It ain't even make it to the news at 9. That's my sister, mother, father, brother, son. That's one of mine. All these years I close my eyes, open up to only find I'm in line. There's a pointless murder happening all the time. Either lose your life or mine. Caught up in them versus die. That ain't how it started, nah. How were we supposed to survive? There's a war going on outside. Who would want to raise a child? Whom the tomb is flashing by. Now you have to say goodbye when you watch them on the news at 5. Don't tell me how, tell me why.
We will make